The number of people who've died in Ethiopia since the killing of a popular singer and activist has nearly doubled to 166. Officials blame the deaths on both the response to the unrest by security forces and on inter-ethnic violence. Singer Hachalu Hundessa was a member of Ethiopia's largest ethnic group, the Oromo. He was shot dead in Addis Ababa on Monday night. Awalalo is a senior lecturer at Kiel University and he's an analyst on the Horn of Africa. He's joining us from Kiel in the UK. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. How concerning is it that officials are blaming, at least in part, the response of the security forces for these deaths?
I think the news that's coming out of the country is absolutely shocking, and it's tragic that every time a major incident happens, ordinary civilians who have absolutely nothing to do with the major political events that trigger these incidents, individuals who are just going about their life will become victims as a result of this. So I think it's important that the government take steps to ensure, to conduct a proper investigation and ensure accountability as far as the civilians are concerned. But I think the bigger picture is an important one. The Prime Minister, since he came to power, he had a huge goodwill on the part of the Oromos and also other ethnic groups. But he really mismanaged the transitional process. He made everything about himself. His mandate when he came to power was to build national consensus and promote reconciliation. He didn't do any of that. There was no discussion of political settlement for the country, where that is one of the major things that the country needs. It's such diverse views about what Ethiopia really is as a country and where Ethiopia needs to go in order for the diverse people in that country to have a common harmonious future. There is no discussion of that. There were calls for national dialogue and those calls were not heard. Instead, the Prime Minister basically wanted to recreate the country in his own image. And I think that is where the problem lies. We have an election that was scheduled for August. That election was postponed. While I think, given the emergency situation, the public health emergency situation that the country is in, it's understandable, but the government needed to build consensus in terms of how that election should be postponed. But also, the government should not have a say, for example, as to when the election should be held. So, every signal the government has given, every steps that the government has taken have really been a huge blunder in terms of taking the country forward. So, this incident essentially puts the transition in a completely different context.
Given what you've just said about the way that the government, in your opinion, has been behaving, do you think that the death of Hachalu Hundessa and the deaths of 166 people might be seen as a tipping point in the future, and we are actually going to see the start of a greater number of protests by Oromo who are essentially fed up with the situation that they have been presented with in the country?
No, absolutely. The assassination of the prominent Oromo singer Hachalu Hundessa is a major event in and of itself that could have provoked a major response. But the steps that the government has taken in terms of arresting prominent political leaders such as Jawar Mohammed, Bekkele Gerba, Shugut Galate, members of the Oromo Federalist Congress and members of the Oromo Liberation Front. These are individuals and organizations with significant following. So these individuals were arrested. The Prime Minister, the day after they were arrested, came out basically in a military garb, making statements that are really not prime ministerial at all. Instead of calming the situation, basically arguing that we will be tough on the individuals that they thought are destabilizing the country. And I just don't think that right now that is the way to approach the situation, calm people and put the country back on a transitional process. And I think what the country really needs to do now is have an all-inclusive, all stakeholder participated in kind of national dialogue that would lead to some kind of agreed upon roadmap that would be implemented by an agreed government. And I think that's what the country needs now. It is, if the Prime Minister simply wants to use force and go ahead the way he seems to be doing right now, I think that puts the country on, another revolutionary path.
We appreciate your time. Awal, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Al Jazeera.